Okay, so the Cleveland Browns are opening up their minicamp today, and they released the schedule last night. So it's only hurry up and wait for 4 more months, and then we're ready to go. Bree, schedule came out last night. I know we're very excited about this. We finally found out what order we play the games in. Initial reactions.
Right, because we knew the opponent. So just needed to understand the times and the days. I have to say, I forgot that this was happening last night. I was at a softball game and I got home and was like getting everyone showered. And then next thing I knew, it was 8:15 and I got the alert on my phone. So then I was like, oh yeah, like now I can sit down and, listen and dig into things on the internet. Although I will say, this is a separate tangent maybe we can talk about. My Twitter experience is so different. Like I don't see the content that I want to see anymore, even for the people that I follow. So yeah. I don't even find Twitter to be that fun anymore, which is disappointing because that was typically the place I would turn when things like this were announced. So lo and behold, there were rumors flying around all day yesterday about
extended an extra day. They have now had like schedule release eve to like extend.
Right. But there were all these rumors swirling about the Browns opening up against the Bengals and speculation that was going to be their season opener. And it was nothing like the 1 p.m. time slot, but it is at home. It's at the stadium in Cleveland. So that's great. And of course we get to play the card of, well, the Browns have Joe Burrow's number. So, everyone's expecting an automatic win from this game. So anyway, I was surprised about the amount of early home games at the beginning of the schedule in the early bye week, week 5. And part of me, I'm going to tap into my negative side right now, my negativity. I'm like, okay, if the Browns are like 1-3 or 1-3 at this point, is Kevin Stefanski getting fired this early on in the season? Because that's what everyone always thinks about the bye week.
Because that's the bye week is the time to fire your coach.
That's right. So I feel like Kevin's safe. Right? Yeah. Like the week 5 bye week, like Kevin is going to be the coach this year. The other thing that jumped out that I know we'll talk about, and I want to get your thoughts too, is the amount of divisional games at the beginning of the year. Pete, I was pretty open about saying this on our podcast. Like the Browns cannot afford to start slow. Like there's no wiggle room at the beginning of the season based on this schedule to start off slow. So that concerns me a little bit, just looking at the early season games they're going to mean something.
Absolutely. One, Deshaun Watson has to be good now. Like he can't roll into the season. They have to be pretty good.
The rust has got to be off.
So that part of it is, I guess, nerve-wracking on some level, but also fun. Like, don't get me wrong. Just from a purely entertainment value standpoint, the first month is awesome. Like you get three games at home. They're all AFC opponents. So the tiebreaker is always huge, especially with how loaded the AFC is. And then 3 divisional games. And if you play well, you're in great shape right away. And the reason I'm okay with the early bye week is 2 reasons. One, because of the way they've used Thursday night, like that, the mini bye, the Roger Goodell swears all the players love, even though JJ Watt immediately comes out and goes, no, we hate this. You sort of like having it almost split into thirds in that sense. So like it can work out. The thing is though, that like they're so far to the extremes with your mini bye is week 17.
Right.
And then, into 18, and then this one's so early. But just looking at the opponents, those could be potentially, the Bengals are going to throw the ball, but those can be very physical football games. You get a bye week early, and if you're playing well, it's get a quick rest, recharge, and then like put your foot to the gas pedal, because then you get to host the 49ers, which will be another challenging football game.
Physical,
or it's, we got to fix stuff quick and, get things corrected, so I can sort of see it like last year they were right in the middle, right, with the bye week. And it like actually was kind of a negative just because of how the Thursday night stuff worked. I sort of like it from that standpoint, but look, again, you have to start right now. You have to be pretty good. And the way I sort of look at it is if the Browns can be 6-6, and this, obviously we're going to be horribly wrong about all these things, and teams we think suck will be good, and teams that we think are good are going to suck. The Denver Broncos are a great example last year, who just, I thought they would be very, in the mix for the AFC title. They were garbage.
They'll be great this year.
But, well, I actually do think they will be better. But if you just look at the second half of the season, Arizona's not going to be good. There's no fixing Arizona this year. Houston's might be better, but they're not going to be good. Like Chicago is not going to be a good football team. They earned the first pick in the draft last year. So if you can get through, and this team has the fortitude that I think in a lot of ways it's lacked the last 2 years, then we'll tap into Bree's track background. I think they can kick in that second half, that latter part of the year, and go on a nice run. Like, I think it sets up well for them. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy by any stretch. I just think if the gauntlet early sort of makes them into a football team, makes them into a good football team, then I think they can have a strong run like the Bengals did last year and sort of charge into the playoffs as opposed to limping into the playoffs. But we shall see.
Yeah. I like your positivity there, because that would be a good view to have if you have faith that this team has the ability to pull it together to be a winning football team. I mean, I feel like this team's always prone to injuries, and at that point in the season, like, that's what worries me the most. Is it feels like the Browns medical staff, training staff is pretty cautious in putting their players on the field. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think that makes sense because it's definitely player focused and the longevity of their careers and thinking about long-term versus just in the moment. But I worry about player availability that late in the year without really having any of those breaks. But I mean, what are you going to do? And in comparing our schedule against some of our other division rivals, I mean, the Steelers and the Bengals are actually put in a very similar situation with early bye weeks. And the only team that has kind of a middle one is the Ravens. Not that I think that really means anything, but I will say, like, it's not like the Browns were given an unfair advantage. I saw a lot of rhetoric yesterday just about this schedule is clearly the NFL still putting the Browns on the blacklist, and the lack of national games. I mean, we have 2 right now. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, I do not need this team to be on the national stage. I actually like the 4:00 spot. So I'm happy that there are some 4:00 games, given that we're going to be on the West Coast. Like, that makes me happy, especially when I think about my flag football status in the fall and where that puts me personally. And then I also selfishly, I like a lot of the home games early in the year because Ohio weather, you never know. So is that favorable? In my mind, yes, actually.
It certainly has the potential to be. I also like the fact that they're hosting Jacksonville, and I think Jacksonville is going to be a good team. I think that's a marquee game, even though it doesn't sound like it. If the Browns are good and the Jags, who are probably going to win the AFC South again, Trevor Lawrence, like, that could be like a really fun game. But yeah, look,
in December.
So yeah, I mean, to suggest that the Browns sort of benefit from the schedule, this is sort of the fourth place schedule thing. Like, but the funny part of it is, like, 2 of the teams they play on the fourth place schedule are like the Jets, which is like the game for the Browns this year. That is like starred and checkmarked and everything else, because the Jets finished last in their division too. So it's not like, it's not some huge benefit that you get to play Aaron Rodgers this year and that team, who should, a lot of people think will be good. But yeah, I think overall, and I agree, the national television thing, I'm fine with, even though the Browns were weirdly good on national television last year. Listen,
yeah, especially Thursdays.
Yes, I would love nothing more than wake up and if the schedule is shown to me and it says 17 1:00 games like that. I'm that guy, but it just makes my life easier.
Well, you know what else I like, Pete? Kind of playing off of that, I like the fact that we faced Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh early on. I'm happy that wasn't like the last game of the season where we have to like march our way over to Pittsburgh. Like, I don't know. There's just something about that just gives me like gross vibes, because we just never played that well there, unless it's a playoff game in 2020.
Yeah, like again, here it's one of those things where the Browns have to have some football character and grit if they're going to be good this year. They have to be able to shed some of those issues that they've had last year. I mean, one of the big things that this team's going to have to do this year is close out games. They struggled to close out games last year. It was a huge issue. The Jets game is the number one example of that, but whether it was the Chargers or the Falcons or the Ravens, some of those other games, they just didn't close out well. And obviously part of that is Deshaun Watson. Part of that is, having what you expect to believe is a better defense than what you've had. So, those are all factors that are going to play into it. So, let's save 7 months. Bree, where are we going to finish? I mean, let's go.
No, I knew you were going to ask me this, and I'm not prepared to answer that. I was thinking about this on my run this morning about if I should go through this and say what's going to be a win and what's going to be a loss. I don't know, Pete. This team is very capable, in my opinion, with the schedule, with how things ended up shaking out in total, to be 10-7, 12-5, or like 6-11. I don't have like a great feeling one way or the other. Again, I think we're gonna know a lot just given how they start. And I feel like we need to kind of throw away week one. Week one always is weird in the NFL. I feel like there are teams that blow people's minds and then they just completely fall off a cliff. But I'm leaning towards this being a favorable winning record. So I think there's 10 wins on here. I do, barring any significant injuries. Sure.
My for funsies pick was 11-6 and them winning the last 7.
Woo, Pete.
But, we're in May, so I'm allowed to do that in May. We'll see what happens when we get closer to September and, we find out that 3 of our players are dead and,
I know.
But yeah, look, it's there for them, right? As we sit here now, as they prepare to go on the Puerto Rico trip that you and I are waiting for our invites for, and the trip to Greenbrier that you and I are waiting for our invites for, it's there for them to be successful. I know the reaction is, look, they have to win or everybody's getting fired. And I sympathize with that to a point. I would just point out that there are 4 division winners. And then after that, it is 3 wild cards between a whole lot of pretty good AFC teams. Those 3 wild cards are going to be an absolute slugfest. In addition to the fact, I think the AFC North is going to be a bloodbath the whole way. So,
here's where I'm at right now. The Browns, in my opinion, they need to beat the Steelers twice. Split with the Ravens and the Bengals. I mean, hell, go beat them all both times. But I don't want to be satisfied this year with just splitting with the AFC North. Go beat the Steelers both times.
I predicted splitting with the AFC North. If Deshaun Watson is what we think he is, those are the games you win. You win those games. And don't get me wrong.
You got to win.
The Steelers play typically a little bit better than their talent would suggest.
Right.
But you have Deshaun Watson and they have Kenny Pickett.
Yes. The Browns, I keep saying we as if I'm part of this organization and I have a uniform. I am not. The Browns need to take the whole mindset of when you look at just quarterback to quarterback matchup, who is the better quarterback? We should win based off of that. How many times have we been on the opposite end where it's like whenever we had that less than favorable matchup from a quarterback standpoint, we typically had a loss. Obviously, there are a lot of other factors that went into some of those losses. But at the end of the day, like if Deshaun Watson is who we think he is, and if he is that player that makes the difference, then we need to make sure we are benefiting from that. And we need to beat the teams that have a less than quarterback. I mean, listen, yes. I hope Deshaun looks at the schedule and thinks, yeah, we're gonna win a lot of games this year. We're gonna win a lot, and it's gonna be because of me. Like that's the mindset that he needs to have and that this team needs to have.
Yes, and on some level, we all know what the Puerto Rico trip is in some ways. Like, it's endearing himself.
Puerto Rico trip?
He's taking the whole team. I believe it's like.
Oh, I didn't know this.
It might be this weekend. This weekend or next or something.
This is why my Twitter experience is terrible. I didn't know this.
Yes, which 100%. The Twitter has gotten a whole lot less useful without getting into the whole thing. But yes, that's the thing that. he's just like they did last year. What was the Bahamas last year?
Yeah.
So this year it's Puerto Rico. I think it's the whole team as opposed to the whole offense. I could be mistaken on that. And part of that is the whole team building thing, and part of that is they want to do some football things. Who knows how serious that is when like they get down to the island, they're like, yeah, we're gonna work out and do, we're gonna really practice. That's always one of those things. Like, all right, yeah. That part of this is they want to sort of set a tone, and then, and I assume he has Kevin Stefanski's full blessing, which is why that sort of goes into the whole Greenbrier thing and spending the first 8 training camp days at Greenbrier for some of the same things. Now, cynically, I always look at this and go, part of the reason they're going to Greenbrier is 1, they can limit media exposure, and 2, they can make sure that nobody leaves, which is always with any football team at any level, always a nice thing, a little peace of mind that you have enough there to do and they can't leave. So it could be very beneficial for them. I certainly understand the thought process. And with the schedule, the Browns allegedly requested that they, when they went to the West Coast, they go to Denver and Los Angeles back to back, that they're just going to stay out there.
Yeah.
So in the evolution of the head coach, I sort of like these little things that Kevin Stefanski's doing, like getting more comfortable year 4, to try to understand his team's mentality and sort of figure out ways to give them a little bit of an edge, as opposed to, guys in their first year, which is, don't get me wrong, I understand that, like, if the Browns go 0-3 to start the season, everybody's going to be ready to destroy him.
Oh.
But this is one of those advantages you have when, and you look at the Steelers and the Ravens, who are in year 15 of their respective coaches and stuff, that like, these are the little advantage you have, that you do get the ability to sort of really understand who you have, as opposed to trying to figure out what you're supposed to do. So I like those little things. All right. Those are football-y things. Now to the marketing aspect of this week. The Browns, I think smartly, look, there's been this sort of official, unofficial dog logo that the Browns have used for years and years and years. So they come out with this fan contest, which is brilliant on its face, to say, hey, we're going to do this thing, even though ultimately this is a great way for the Browns to sell merch. God bless them. That's what it is for. More power to them. You can totally relate to this. But so they come out with this contest, they come up with all these entries, and then they put the fan voted logo along with 4 other logos that they came up with. And now they're doing another vote to see what dog logo they are going to come up with, and sort of stick with to sell a bunch of apparel. My first question.
Go finish. No, you finish.
Well, my first question is, and somewhere along the lines, the Browns have decided the Bull Mastiff is the official dog.
No, that's what the fans decided, I guess, because they all submitted like the same dog.
Well, no, I think before that happened, the Browns sort of came out and said the Bull Mastiff, and
okay, I didn't realize that.
And I questioned that decision on a little bit.
What did you want to see, like a poodle?
Well, listen, all I would say is, you have a little tank at your house, a couple of them, that are durable and reliable.
A little Boston Terrier French Bulldog mix. Yeah.
And I question the Bull Mastiff from the standpoint of they're a dog that very, very susceptible to hip dysplasia and some joint issues, and they don't live very long. And unfortunately, when the Browns, they really don't live very long, as we unfortunately had the very sad and early funeral for Swagger.
Well, is that what Swagger was? The bull?
Yeah, he's a Bull Mastiff.
And Swagger Jr., they're Bull Mastiffs?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I know the Browns are sitting here going, hey, we want Cujo, but they've sort of ended up with Hooch a little bit. So I do have questions. Is that really the best dog? But anyway, beyond that, your thoughts initially on what you've seen. I know I have one complaint with 2 of the logos, but go for it.
Okay, so I want to preface this by saying that I actually love like bringing the dog back into like incorporated somehow the logo. Like everyone like went crazy over the elf last year, and I think the elf is cute and whatnot. But I just love the dog situation. First of all, the fact that the Browns don't have any type of like official mascot is always weird, like that we're just a helmet. So I do think this is a very smart business decision because they got a lot of positive feedback on the elf last year, Brownie the elf. So having a dog be another update to merchandise to be able to sell. And I thought it was cool that they incorporated the fans by like making it a contest. Like, I think that's like an awesome way to engage fans, especially during the off season, to get people excited about it. The Browns have a really big tendency to create a lot of buzz during the April and May months.
Yes.
Again, very smart because there's not a lot going on. There's not a lot of content. So creating these like launches and these big ideas and these contests during the off season, like it's a really good way to keep people engaged and involved and droning up excitement for what's to come. I think my biggest thing right now is, and maybe this is just me getting older, and I'm just like an angry old woman now when it comes to my sports teams, but I just want to win football games. Like, I think it's cute. I think it's fun, but like, I'm just like sick of the hype of like when they change their colors and the orange was brighter and then it's a uniform release and then it's a new quarterback and then it's the draft and then it's another new quarterback and then it's uniform release and then it's a free agent signing that we're all really excited. Now it's a dog drawing logo content. I mean, Pete, like, and then with the schedule release, another marketing ploy with the WrestleMania thing, I do like the entertainment aspect. I did not like the Browns version. And I guess I'm not a big I'm not a big wrestling person, but when you are a team that has been consistently bad, I just didn't like the look of like we are pummeling every single opponent. I mean, the Titans was hilarious. Like, that's a way to do it where like no one 6 months from now is going to pull that back up and be like, you guys are idiots. Like, I just see this like schedule release. There's going to be screen grabs, like any loss we have. I mean, I just didn't like it.
Have you shown your kids the Browns?
I have not, and I need to do that. Because
I suspect they will like it more than you will.
I'm sure they will.
But because I think that's who that was for.
You think?
I look, don't get me wrong. There's certainly people who enjoy it, who are adults. Nathan Zagura is big into wrestling.
Yes, I know.
Obviously, he's friends with The Miz, who's a wrestler.
Yes.
So go with what you've got. I get it, but I agree with you. I think the Titans one is great. The Chargers always get a lot of claim. The Chargers they always do the anime. They've done the anime thing. They talk shit. Like, they talk a lot of shit.
Yeah, and I saw the Chargers one and everyone like loved it. And I would agree. I feel like though theirs was like a little bit more subtle. Like, you had to like really pay attention.
Sure.
Which I liked because there's like little nuggets, that you have to like find, and people were screen grabbing things and pointing it out. And I don't know. It's just so funny to me that this schedule release has become such like a big marketing thing that all of these teams like having to now spend the budget for a schedule release and all of this like extensive like design and graphic design and production and theater that goes into it. It's wild.
Which is funny because the Titans probably spent $20.
Right, because they interviewed people on Broadway.
Went outside.
In Nashville.
Yeah, they just went outside.
Random unsuspecting people.
I still can't get over the woman who saw the Falcons logo and said Red Stallions and went rawr.
Rawr. I know. Did you see it? Did you see the Falcons updated their name to Red Stallions? Yes. Rawr?
That part is spectacular that none of those things work together, but go
and
nuts.
Then every Colts logo they thought were the Cowboys, which was also hilarious.
The star has lost its
star means nothing. Yeah. Jerry Jones. He's got to rethink that.
So to the dog logo thing, look, I look at it this way, the brownie has a very strong opinions. Nobody's I shouldn't say that. I'm sort of indifferent to the brownie. I don't really care. It's fine, whatever. But there are people who really love it, and there are people who really hate it. By incorporating the dog logo and the helmet and all these other things, you give everybody an avenue to pick what they want, and they can just go about their way. So on that part, they're winning easily. Like, it's great for them because that's the one thing where the Browns, being sort of a concept as opposed to an actual thing, allows you to be very creative and works great on that.
But wait, which ones did you hate?
I don't want to say hate.
Okay.
The ones I found very, very, for whatever reason, and the old dog logo does the same thing. I don't know why they felt the need to put a light source on it from one side and have shading. Like it's because those things, like to me, those dog logos, certainly they're going to be on t-shirts and stuff, but those things end up on the most is like golf shirts. And
is the person that wins do they get paid for this?
Well, I think only the one is the fan logo, the one, and that's the one that's very busy with the CLE incorporated, the very muscular neck that people have compared to a Game of Thrones house logo. And just from that, so from my standpoint, I'm looking at this as like, what's going to go on a golf shirt? It's probably not going to be that one.
Yeah,
and that's why I think, like, as much as it's like simple and almost a little bit cartoonish, I think the one that's a little childish.
I'm pulling these back up. It
just has a straight on simple, again, like as if the light is right where it's supposed to be.
Oh, the one on, okay, I see. So the first one has like the shadow off to the right.
Both of them are from like the side.
Yeah.
The top,
I feel like that's because they wanted to incorporate the brown, right?
I guess
that was my take on it.
But if that's the case, then that is smarter. You're smarter than I am.
Well, this is what I do for a living. I have to analyze shit like this.
But that one and the bottom right, the very oldish Jeff Lloyd looking dog is very popular. People love that one.
Oh, everyone likes the one with the wrinkles and the jowls. Yes, I don't like that one. No.
Personally, if you're going with those two, I think the other one is better from the light source, that was just the top left of those five.
Yeah, actually, I voted for that one. And like, I like the one for the middle, the little side angle where it's like teeth are showing. Those are some good teeth. My dog's teeth don't look like that.
But I think the bottom left, I think that's the one. Is that the little cartoony one?
Uh-huh.
Like that's the one I think is the easiest one to slap on a golf shirt and go about your day.
That's fair. So,
but either way, I think
he looks mean, but like not too mean.
Yeah, like,
which I feel like fits like the Browns' personality, right?
Your daughter could wear that.
We haven't earned
your
the
daughter
teeth.
Would wear that shirt. She's maybe not as inclined to wear the one with the CLE veiny neck that's on there. But who knows?
I like how they all have spikes. The one that you like does not have spikes.
Yeah, yes, the spike collar is certainly popular.
Yeah.
So it's funny. Like we laugh at it, but they're going to make a ton of money off of it, and more power to them. Again, giving fans a lane to pick, so they don't feel like they have to get the brownie or they have to get any one thing. They can sort of pick and be happy with it. Good for them. So the Browns, since behind the unmasking us, this was a week of not being able to get ourselves together. It sort of worked out. As we tape this on Friday morning, the Browns have signed 5 of their draft picks. They've signed 9 undrafted free agents, and they're getting ready for minicamp. They're going to do football things. I wrote an article today. I think 3 or 4 of the undrafted free agents have a really good shot to make this team, just by the way the Browns sort of drafted this thing. But that also means we got new numbers to analyze.
I did not see this. Well, I mean, I think I saw the alert pop up. I did not see the new jersey numbers. Oh yes, no, now I do.
Okay, now.
Okay, all right.
Dorian Thompson-Robinson, 17.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. I have no problem with that. Perfectly good looking number. Cameron Mitchell, 29. Fine, no problem there. Luke Whippler, who I really, really like, 56. That's a strong number that's a bold number for a center. Siaki Ika is 62, which is what he wore, which is whatever. I think that's a doughy defensive lineman number, but that's sort of who he is. DeJuan Jones, 74. That's a good bold choice. Cedric Tillman, 89. My immediate reaction is I hope another number comes available that he can switch into. But I'm old
89.
enough.
89. Okay.
I'm old school enough. I can sort of appreciate numbers in the 80s still, as opposed to everybody trying to jump to single digits now.
Yeah.
And then
that's gonna be weird.
And then Isaiah McGuire, 91. Whatever. It's fine. Of the undrafted free agents, there are 3 or 4 I think are in a good spot to make the team. The one I think has the best chance to make this team of all of them is Lonnie Phelps from Kansas. He's a Cincinnati kid, started at Miami of Ohio, and then I don't know if he just transferred or grad transferred to finish out at Kansas. But my early prediction is, so long as he doesn't get hurt, he's going to be a fan favorite in preseason very quickly.
I like that.
He plays super fast. He's a 244-pound defensive end, stand-up edge rusher who just plays with his hair on fire all the time.
Give me someone to root for.
And he ran a 4.55 40, which is obviously very quick. His 10-yard split was super fast. But what sort of stands out to him, and you see it in how he plays, is even though he's 244, he benched 225 31 times. Like, he is a put-together young man and uses power in his game. Now, part of the reason I think he's going to be a fan favorite is because he just goes 100 miles per hour. He will chase down stuff on defense. The other reason I think he could be a fan favorite very quickly is because he plays on kickoff. And he's a 244-pound man who flies down there and is in a street fight every time it's a kickoff. Like, he wants to do damage, and he's going to do it. So I appreciate him from that standpoint. So it's interesting that he's local-ish and that he's, basically from Kentucky, in Cincinnati. But look, Ohio kid, I think he fits what Jim Schwartz wants to do really, really well. If you're playing those super wide ends, he can just fly off the ball and then race, essentially, and then he's going to try to convert speed to power and just go through the offensive tackle with good leverage. The other guy that really stands out as a guy who should be able to make this team is Ronnie Hickman.
That's what I was going to say. That's who I'm rooting for.
Yes. I am very curious to see what Jim Schwartz wants to do with his strong safeties. I get the impression that he wants them to be in the box a whole lot more, which Grant Delpit has done well with in his career. But that's really where Ronnie Hickman has been good at Ohio State, is playing close to the line of scrimmage and sort of playing inside out, being able to scrape over the top and chase down plays and play downhill, like see the ball as opposed to turning his back to it. I don't think he plays particularly well turning around. His production at Ohio State was really good. Like, he did really, really well. The reason there were questions about him, he had an injury situation that prevented him from ever working out athletically. And there are people who just don't believe he's very fast. If you're playing near the line of scrimmage, less of a problem. But just to the safety thing, behind Grant Delpit and Juan Thornhill, who, by the way, Juan Thornhill is crushing social media in terms of like how to get people back.
I didn't realize he got a tattoo.
That's a good. Wow. Yeah. That's,
talk about a fan, talk about a fan favorite.
Yes. He's doing everything in his power to endear himself. And look, you can be as cynical as you want. Like, people are like, this was a radio topic. Like, why would you get a tattoo of the Browns when you've been there 20 minutes? I can tell you why he got a tattoo or why somebody might give a tattoo of the place they work at. If your job comes to you, Bree, and says, here's $20 million if you get it, you might be like excited enough to be like, all right, I may throw a tattoo on here. He's obviously got 2 Super Bowls with the Chiefs, but his, rookie deal is a rookie deal. It doesn't pay you. Like, this is where you get your money. So, and he has a tattoo of the Chiefs, I think, on him already. And I think he has the NFL shield on, like, which is always funny because it makes you think of Rob Lowe and that meme of him just sitting with the NFL hat. But yes, he got the tattoo, and all these people are really excited about him. And look, let's be honest. There are people who just are looking for an excuse to get a tattoo. Now, to his credit, I think he should have put out who did the work, because it's a beautiful tattoo. Like, the artist did a great job with it. But yes, he's on it. And while we're at it on the safety thing, I think the signing of Rodney McLeod is a way bigger deal than people think it is. Like,
yeah, that's been like, I don't think talked about enough, just based on what I've seen and just the amount of people that talk so highly of him being such a good addition. And I don't know, maybe that's just where we're at right now with coverage.
Explain where he sold you, though. He got you quick.
Yeah, because you sent me that Twitter where he went. What show was he?
He's on NFL. He was doing some sort of like NFL Network's always doing these like intern things where they like give players opportunities to come in. So he's been like doing some studio work,
some media stuff.
And yeah, so he's just like, and so they allowed him as this thing as while he's in free agency to sort of announce where he's going.
Yeah. So you had sent me that, and he just talked about how excited he was to play for the Browns, and Jim Schwartz specifically wanting to be on a team and play for him. Like that's what got me. Like, we're not used to players wanting to play in Cleveland, especially if and when they have choices elsewhere. So I know everybody wants to like fire everyone all the time. But I think we just need to keep this in mind as we move forward into this season. Like if things aren't going our way, can we please just like give it some time?
The thing with Rodney McLeod is that he has been a starter for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years in the league. This will be the first year he's a third safety. And he has played all three spots. He's played free, he's played strong, and he's played in the slot. And like all of these things are super, super valuable. So to be clear, the thing we've harped on all year, he's an adult. They need all the adults he can get. Like, and with all the issues they had last year with communication, Rodney McLeod should be a guy who helps you clear up any issues communication wise. So yes, I love that move. I think it gives you a lot more options. And with the sheer amount of corners they have, it's an embarrassment of riches in terms of just the amount of things Jim Schwartz wants to do on the back end. Like he gets all these toys he gets to play with for the next couple of months. So I think that move is huge. So with that and Juan Thornhill and Rod, behind them, D'Anthony Bell is still here. And then Ronnie Hickman is like that next guy up potentially. They also brought in Tanner McAllister, who plays in that safety room. He could compete at a couple different spots. But yeah, it's there for Ronnie Hickman, theoretically, to me. So I think that's another guy that has the ability to make a roster. And the setup the Browns did, I think, deliberately in some ways to enable them to take more advantage of this draft class and get some of these undrafted free agents, which is smart because the reason they did it, or based on what I'm reading into it, because of how they drafted, they took 5 guys at super premium positions, like the guys you pay all the money for: quarterback, wide receiver, corner, offensive tackle, defensive end. Like those are all the money positions. And then they had defensive tackle and center, which are 2 positions they're paying a whole lot of money for, and they'd probably like not to, and they need sort of a clear line of succession. Everything else, undrafted type guys. So yeah, I think it could, there's a risk with it, but I think it could pay off handsomely for what they want to do.
I concur.
I'm going to finish up the latter half of this pod with the most excited person on the planet for the schedule release, Abby Mueller, which should be interesting. All of this, Bree makes fun of it because she's in the business of doing this, even though so is Abby, which is funny to me. But like all the stuff she does, Abby eats all of it up. Is like super excited for all these things. So I'm interested to see what her thoughts on the schedule. As always, do me a favor, get this out of the way. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, whatever, about the podcast. And yeah, Bree and I will talk again, hopefully earlier next week, since there will be now minicamp things to talk about. Okay, joining me is the target of all the ads and hype that are the NFL schedule release and everything else, Abby Mueller, who also has her own podcast, Just a Girl in Cleveland. Is that it?
Girl from Cleveland.
Girl from Cleveland. We're not even, okay, we've disavowed that you're in there. All right, fair enough.
It had to be based on what LeBron says is really what I was going for.
Fair enough. You love the schedule release. In fact, you love the schedule release more than anyone I know. So 1, why? And 2, did it deliver the way you hoped?
I don't know why I love it so much. I think it has to do a lot with just the excitement going into the season that has nothing to do with the actual results that end up upsetting me eventually. So it's all the planning and excitement of what games I'm going to go to and thinking that we're going to win games that we end up losing. So I think it's like the happiest we are ever as Browns fans is just when the schedule is released.
Fair enough. And you only have slightly under 4 months to prepare.
Perfect.
Any takeaways from what the Browns get?
Yeah. So I feel like to most fans, what stood out when you first read the schedule was the front loaded divisional games, 3 of the first 4 weeks being division opponents. And I think that's just going to tell us a lot to kick off the season on what this team is going to be. Obviously, it's a long season, but it's going to be important to try to get some of those. And we typically, I don't think, have it front loaded like that. I think last year it was kind of middle of the season and spread out like pretty well for the division games. So I am a little bit nervous looking at that and how that's going to go. And then other than that, at the beginning, we have the Titans and the 49ers in those first 6 weeks there as well, which I think can end up being like some pretty competitive games. Like the 49ers always play hard no matter what, a decent team. And even though the Titans, I don't consider them a great team, I think they're a team that will end up playing us hard. So those beginning weeks are going to be really interesting to see where this team is actually going to land.
Yeah, sure. Last year, the first months was set up to say, take advantage. And they blew it, obviously, with the Jets game and then losing to the Falcons. But, going in, everybody thought if they're going to make the playoffs or be competitive or whatever, they needed to go 4-0. They went 2-2.
Right.
Yeah, the initial start of the schedule, everything just screams physicality. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what it is to me. And the Titans wide receivers are awful, but Mike Vrabel is going to have guys who just pound on you. So for me, that early bye week could be helpful just by virtue of giving you a break from potentially those first 4, and then we'll see what they do with it. But then coming back and getting the 49ers at home. But yes, tons of home games early, which could be very good for them if they take advantage. My feeling is that they muddle through, 6-6 area. And I think it will shape who this team is. And if they're good, they'll be in a position to sort of kick into that latter part where they play teams like the Cardinals and the Bears and the Texans and some of those teams, Rams. And if they're good, then those become victories that you can pile up and potentially make your way into the offseason. So I asked Bree, and my prediction based on the initial in May was 11-6. Where are you on the everything? Nothing has gone too wrong so far. Initial reaction prediction. So
I know 2 seasons ago, I remember my prediction was 13-4, which
I was in that. Yeah, I did that.
So I'm going much lower this year. I'm going 10-7. I feel like it's realistic. We end up dropping games that we're supposed to win. That always ends up happening. You look at the schedule and you say, we should definitely take this game, and it doesn't end up happening. So 10-7 is where I'm going, but I am optimistic in terms of what, the schedule looks like, other than our division opponents. Like we do have all winnable games. Like when you look across the board, it's not like we're going through a gauntlet of Kansas City, Buffalo, like tough non-division opponents. We have a lot of winnable games. So it could definitely fluctuate and they surprise me, but 10-7 is where I'm at. So I don't disappoint myself.
Well, look, I mean, if they get there, they should be in the playoffs. I mean, which at that point, anything else is gravy. So we're not going to be, I don't think, trust me. Well, I shouldn't say that because I guarantee there will be people who find a way to be upset with just making the playoffs. But if we're there, we're good. You were supposed to take part in the draft stuff. Life came up. You did all the videos. You did a great job with those. So I am curious now, with sort of time to digest the 2023 Browns draft class for you. Thoughts? Anything you've sort of come around on or maybe hate even more than you did initially?
Yeah, so I think initially, just first reactions to the draft where there were some like surprising picks in there, I think, to a lot of fans. But I think I talked about this in some of my videos when I kind of took the perspective of the team really just going best player available, more getting value at the picks rather than picking for certain positions necessarily. I think when you look at the draft in that way, they did a pretty decent job there and got some really high value at some decent picks where we didn't have picks till the third round. So it's hard to get high value in those positions when you don't have any first or second rounders. And they were able to get some guys that were projected in a lot of boards in those earlier rounds, which I think is a pretty huge win. Now, you're going to have to wait 3-4 years down the line for some of these guys to see if it actually pans out and they end up providing that value. But I think it's a risk you're willing to take. Like people get upset sometimes with, why did we take this guy in the fourth round? It's like, it's a gamble no matter what. Even if you think it's a more solid player, it's a fourth rounder. Like that is going to be a gamble. So I'd rather take a bigger risk with someone with a higher upside than to kind of just take a safer choice that might not end up even, making the roster a year down the road. So some of the picks, I think I am really interested to see how they work out. Number one is DeJuan Jones, my Buckeye pick, which I'm always happy to see. It doesn't happen as much as I would like as,
all right. Now you've got 4 Buckeyes.
I know this year it did good for me this year. I was very happy with it. Cause it's been kind of weird over the years. They really just haven't made that, 2 hours down the road connection very much. But I did like this pick in terms of the upside. I just feel like he has the potential to really do something on this team and like be an impactful player. And where we got him at pick 111, I think was a bit of a steal. I think that there's obviously like a lot of questions about him. I saw some interviews today. I don't know if you saw that he was talking about how he's been dropping like a lot of weight every week recently, which is great to hear that he's, putting in that work, because there were concerns about him and kind of his commitment to football and, keeping that weight down. So we'll see how it pans out. But I think it was an interesting pick to make and projecting for the Browns offensive line in the future. Just as, we're paying a lot of guys on that line right now and you can't pay them forever. So we'll kind of see where that goes. I think the one pick that really shocked everyone was the quarterback pick. I was kind of in that boat too when I first saw it come up. Just was not expecting to take a quarterback in this draft, considering how much money we have invested in the quarterback position right now. But look, like they, obviously clearly really liked the guy and would rather develop a backup rather than continue to pay, even a couple million more for a backup every season here behind Deshaun Watson. So I think if that's the route they want to go, this was a good option, and he can, play in a similar way to Deshaun Watson and fit well into this offense. So I didn't like the pick at first in terms of the position, but in terms of the value it could provide and not having to pay other guys, I think, I've come around to that one a little bit more.
Well, I mean, you talk about DeJuan Jones, and I wrote about this in an article that came out. This is Friday. So today, you just mentioned with DeJuan Jones, like if DeJuan Jones hits, it's a huge deal.
Huge.
Because he plays a position that's super valuable. And the Browns drafted 5 guys in that camp: quarterback, wide receiver, defensive end, offensive tackle, and corner. To your point that you said, if you're going to take a swing on something that's going to potentially pay off big, there's a strong argument to lean more into that, that they should do that more often. And the contrast to that is, like, you look at what the Detroit Lions did. They took Jahmyr Gibbs at 12, and then they took Jack Campbell at, I think, 18. And those could be very good players, but even if they are great players, it's a running back and a middle linebacker, which can be good and valuable. But if DeJuan Jones hits and he's a franchise left tackle or right tackle or whatever, he's just a great tackle.
Yeah.
He's infinitely more valuable than either of those guys. So there's a case to be made that you do that and you just keep swinging at those guys. And obviously when they took Siaki Ika and they took Luke Whippler, those you can still make those types of picks. But in that case, they are taking guys that are Dalvin Tomlinson's got a pretty hard 2-year out. They're paying him over 4 years, but it's a 2-year out. If Ika can sort of step up and be that guy, we'll see. Then you understand why they made that pick. Same thing with Luke Whippler. If he can become a good starting center, which I think he can be, then you understand that it allows you to save money at center and some of those other things. So I totally get it. That combined with the fact that you like literally, whether by design, and I think it's partly by design, you just simply ignored positions that you had holes at.
Yeah.
I thought running back they were going to take. I thought it was a very good class. I thought, okay, it's another, if no other reason beyond Nick Chubb's present and future, just more weapons is more weapons for Deshaun Watson. And then safety was another one where you have obvious holes. So now you have guys that you signed as undrafted free agents that were, I don't know how in demand Hassan Hall was, but Ronnie Hickman was draftable by most, if you get in consensus boards and that stuff, Ronnie Hickman was a draftable football player. So he's got a really good chance. I should say it's there for him to make the roster. If he does, then you're getting more value out of the draft without using any picks. The thought process there is that, look, agents aren't stupid. They're going to look around and say, where's the best chance for my client to make a roster? Because that's how they're going to make the most money. And you look at the Browns safeties position, and even though they signed Roddy McLeod, who I'm very, very high on, Ronnie Hickman potentially has a really good shot to make that roster. So like now you have more guys looking at you and saying, no, I want to sign there. And now the Browns sort of get to do a little picking and choosing and say, who's the best guy for us? Who's going to fit us the best? And so now you not only get draftable players after the draft that can make your roster. So now you've done all these things to sort of maximize the value. Whereas the past couple of years, since Andrew Berry's been in charge, their undrafted free agents have been underwhelming in some ways. And, some of that is just, you don't know who they are. They're from tiny schools. I mean, even DeAnthony Bell, who made it, West Florida is not exactly like a, premier college. To this point, they've had DeAnthony Bell is the only undrafted free agent to make the opening day roster. So I think 3 or 4 could end up making it this year based on that. Lonnie Phelps, Ronnie Hickman, Hassan Hall has a really good shot, even though he never really popped at either Louisville or Georgia Tech. And I'm curious to see if Charlie Thomas can do it, but I'm probably missing. Mohamed Diabate from Utah is another one that's got a decent shot. That it now gives you just more value. And if you hit on the picks that you took the premium players at, whatever, then you win. You really capitalize, and just a way of sort of making more and more value. So it's interesting that you picked up on that because there's an argument to be made that you should use every pick on those guys, even though obviously you're going to have to fill holes at certain positions at points, but that largely everything should be aimed at that. So Dorian Thompson-Robinson, you look at they drafted backup quarterback. I didn't think they'd draft a quarterback either. I was loud wrong on that, but I understand it. Like if he's good, even if you're looking at this and going, Deshaun Watson, we want him here for 2 contracts. If Dorian Thompson-Robinson's good, he's a trade chip. He's something that you can get a cheap backup for now, and then later in his contract, you can trade him and potentially bring in more assets that allow you sort of repeat the process. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and Deshaun has had a history of injuries in his career. So it is, pertinent for the Browns to have a good backup that they, feel comfortable putting in and, having to maybe play a couple games in a season. Cause I know obviously he's been out for other reasons in the last few years, but he did prior to that have some injury issues. So I think that's something people forget about with him.
Yes. And look, 2 ACLs. I mean, he's had not just injuries, but major injuries.
Sure.
Situation is everything for quarterbacks. I love Dorian Thompson-Robinson's situation. I liked him as a player anyway. I didn't think they'd draft a quarterback, but I was a big fan of his. I like the fact that he's going to have Josh Dobbs here for probably this year. Josh Dobbs gets to be sort of that sounding board guy for Watson. Meanwhile, he also is a professional quarterback who's super intelligent. and can be valuable as a mentor type person for DTR. Like could be huge for him. DTR played in the Chip Kelly offense. Chip Kelly had Bill Musgrave with him when he was with the Eagles at that point. Now the Browns have Bill Musgrave on their staff. When Bill Musgrave was the offensive coordinator at Cal, he did a lot of those spread things and, things that you might see in the Chip Kelly offense. And that stood out to me that Kevin Stefanski by name said that Bill Musgrave has been with Chip Kelly. Like, I don't think that was an accident.
Right.
So all those things suggest to me that like DTR could not have done better in terms of where he ended, with the caveat, as long as they don't screw it up. And by that, I mean, Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski don't screw it up, or the Browns franchise doesn't screw it up by having to blow it up. That is such a critical part. So that to me gives DTR sort of the best chance to be whatever he's going to be.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And like you said, it did shock me in the moment, but I am, more comfortable with it now when you just project towards the future of what this team could need. The one other pick that I have kind of really liked was the Cameron Mitchell pick, just in terms of kind of always adding to the cornerback room. Like, I think this is just kind of common across all teams of you can never have too many. And, we've kind of needed that slot guy because Greg obviously has not been comfortable moving forward in the slot and has kind of made that known publicly. So I think this is kind of a good option to test and see if it works. And in general, like we have, a couple good cornerbacks on the roster, but some of them have had some injury issues in the past. Notably, Denzel Ward has had some injury issues. So I think it always makes sense to stack up more when you can, even though it wasn't necessarily a position that we needed more players at right now. It's one that you can always use more at.
Yes, I like Cameron Mitchell as a fit. I think he does what the Browns want him to do. He's a man cover corner. He did a lot of good things. I think for people who want to look at it, I think it's important that he played hard on a garbage football team. And, Northwestern is a hell of a university and normally a hell of a program. They were every bit of a 1-11 team. They were awful. And he played hard.
They gave Ohio State a run for their money in that one game, though, which was kind of embarrassing.
Yes. For whatever reason, Ohio State has become a team that does not react well to weather.
No.
Allergic to water. But he played hard in that game. He had a couple of big plays, but the game that really stood out to me for him, if you're trying to watch, is Purdue. He went against Charlie Jones quite a bit, who's now with the Bengals. I think his physicality sort of took over a little bit, even though he gave up a touchdown on a sort of a broken play. But anyway, if Cameron Mitchell hits, let's say he hits like Martin Emerson did last year, and I'm not saying he will, just if he does, it does a couple things. First, Denzel Ward makes a whole lot of money. He did not play well this past year. I'm not going to suggest that Denzel Ward just stinks now, but it sort of enforces a standard. And that if he doesn't have a great season and Mitchell steps up and Greg Newsome plays well and Martin Emerson keeps playing well, that now you could potentially look at Denzel Ward and go, I'm listening if anybody wants to call, and I can potentially make salary cap savings and get more draft assets to continue building this thing. The flip side of that is, as you mentioned, Greg Newsome. Greg Newsome's press conference was outstanding in terms of attitude and everything else. Will it stay that way if Martin Emerson beats him out for that other spot on the outside, and now he's got to do a little bit more floating than maybe he thought? Does that change things? If that's the case, then here again, you have Cameron Mitchell who can sort of, if he's good, hold that standard and make it so, okay, we can sort of, we're either the Browns can say we're not dealing with this and we're just going to move on, or it just gives them options in terms of like that. And, and in some ways I don't think they drafted Cameron Mitchell because he's Greg Newsome's buddy. I think they drafted him because he's a talented football player, but that never hurts.
For sure. Always an added bonus, I think. And I believe they've like known each other even previous to Northwestern. Like they go back pretty far, which is nice.
Yeah, the Browns have become a very lazy drafting team. They just pick a guy they like, and then they just get his friends. So they got Dorian Thompson Robinson, or Cedric Tillman's buddy, Dorian Thompson Robinson, and then they go and get Greg Newsome's buddy, Cameron Mitchell. It's very lazy. It's also lazy that they just open up Georgia's schedule and go, okay, who are they playing? Okay, who played well against them? Draft 4 of them.
Yeah.
They got both Buckeyes who played well in the playoff game. They got Cedric Tillman, who destroyed Keely Ringo. And who am I missing? They got they've got Isaiah McGuire, who played really well against Broderick Jones, who's now a member of the Steelers. So, and they did the thing last year where they thought they liked Alex Wright in part because of how he played against Georgia.
That's funny. Well, then the Eagles took the opposite route and just drafted Georgia players. So we're just in tandem with them right now.
True. So it's interesting. So the draft strategy part of that, to me, is interesting. I'm curious to see if the Browns sort of lean into this. And obviously, it's going to depend on a lot if it works. If these undrafted free agents just stink, they still have the ability to go out and get players. But if, like, we're in the season and Nick Chubb twists his ankle,
right,
and suddenly running back's a problem, then it becomes very easy to pick and complain about, well, you didn't do this, this, and this. So, and they've obviously got to hit on some of these guys. Mm-hmm. The DeJuan Jones thing is interesting. I think in part he eats like a 21-year-old, and 21-year-olds don't often think about it. And the difference is that DeJuan Jones went from doing all this, well, one, being managed in many ways, being told you have to be here at this time, we're working out at this time, you're eating at this time, and here's what you're eating, as opposed to sort of being left to his own devices as a 21-year-old kid. And just the way his body works, one, he's going to eat a lot by virtue of how big he is. And it's probably not very difficult. Unfortunately, with the way he's built, it probably doesn't take very much for him to put on weight. Similarly, it probably doesn't take much for him to lose weight. So I'm, ultimately, I think with DeJuan Jones, he will determine if he wants to be a great football player. I think it's there for him. I was very pleasantly surprised in going into his offense, his tackle play at Ohio State on tape. But I think part of the problem you get into is like this need to love the game of football. There are a whole lot of successful NFL players who treat the NFL like a 9-to-5 job, and they're there. And when they're there, they're engaged, they're involved, they want to be great, but they don't love it the way that, fans do or whatever. They don't. And you've heard this from like superstar players. They're like, I don't watch the game like post career or whatever, or I didn't watch the game before I got into the NFL. Like, so I don't worry too much about that, but certainly there's a risk. I worry about joints at that size. I'm hoping that sub 350 is where I'm hoping to see him at. If he does, I'm morbidly curious to see just how good he can be, because I think he's just so strong and quicker than people think that he can just run over people.
Yeah. When you talk about the love of the game stuff too, I think this was 2 years ago, Trevor Lawrence, when they had asked him about, just how much he loved the game in general. And he was kind of just like, I have things outside of football. Like, this isn't everything to me. Like, he just valued other things in his life. And people got very upset with him for saying that it wasn't his everything. And I think, after just watching him last season, like, clearly he still, gives it everything he has when he is out there and has the ability to be a phenomenal quarterback. But guys just value different things in their life differently. And that, I think, is okay. And people need to, I think, come around to accepting that a little more, that maybe we love our teams a little bit more than the players actually do.
Yes. I mean, like, you contrast that. Did you watch the that thing they released with Elijah Moore?
I haven't yet. No.
Like, he's working out in the off season at his old high school. It's a giant commercial for St. Thomas Aquinas in Florida, but he's also in there. And he's the opposite. Like, he's a psychopath for football. And you watch that and like his intensity, I think that's what happened with the Jets. He's like 3 workouts a day guy, and like, it's all he does. And that's like his life. So when he's in the Jets and he's sitting there going, look, this is how hard I work at this. I take this super seriously and I'm not getting the ball. That had to drive him insane. For sure. And like, we're already in this thing where like, I like Mary Kay Cabot was asked, like, is this going to be a problem? I just look at it as he's that dedicated to it, and that if things go well for him, they're going to get him the ball, and he's going to be phenomenal in that regard. It's like, it's very interesting how we sort of take things that like we encounter in everyday life, but when it's a professional football player, it's it's amplified to a point where like there's no return.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to go back and watch it because I know I saw it pop up, but I haven't got around to it yet. And that is honestly probably what happened. And, there's, I guess, the two extremes of it, of being, the Trevor Lawrence and the Elijah Moore side, but both can, I think, be a detriment and a benefit to you depending on what situation you're in. So if Elijah Moore is, getting the amount of targets that he is happy with in Cleveland, like he could end up being incredible because of that. So I think it's all very situation dependent when it comes to attitudes and that kind of stuff.
Right. And if you are, and this could be applied to anything, but if you are somebody who's pressing so hard at something, it can ultimately do damage. Yeah. There is that part of you that sort of needs to let go and sort of let it happen a little bit. So we shall see. But, I'm curious to see where that goes. But like I said, I am very curious to see how this process plays out, because I think what they did in the draft and how they operated with this could be something that they sort of embrace going forward if it's successful. And they just, everything they're doing so like is what you call process picks, and like all these things that make sense based on, where you're taking these guys and talent wise. And now it's just, they just need the hit rate to sort of pay off enough that it's going to work it out. So anyway, Abby, this was great. I wanted to get you a chance to sort of be able to finally opine on some of these things. And obviously you're the official, if what should happen if you didn't have a real job is that I should just have you do all of the chasing down of the schedule before the schedule comes out.
Oh, that would be fun. I would like that. That would be a great full-time job,
Yes. You can be the person who just scours all over the place and puts together the Browns schedule in the 12-hour period, even though we got like a weird schedule leak eve this year.
Oh yeah. I'm always following all those accounts on Twitter too that are like NFL leaks, and I'm trying to put together like, okay, if we can't play this team in week 2, who are we playing then? It's a lot of fun. It's like a puzzle.
All right. Anyway, we'll be back next week. We'll figure out some more stuff. Obviously, at some point we'll have Abby back on to get into more stuff. But anyway, yeah, we'll be back.